I found my husband and my younger sister in our bed. I didn't yell. I stayed silent and recorded everything. Then called my mama, her fiancé, and everyone to give them a surprise. My name is Lorraine Mitchell. Most people call me Lori. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, and I work as a medical billing specialist at Providence Hospital downtown. I've lived in this city my whole life. Went to Murphy High School, got baptized at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, and married my husband Darnell in the same sanctuary where my parents said their vows 40 years ago. Take a deep breath, because what I'm about to tell you involves the two people I trusted most in this world, my husband and my baby sister. And what they did together in my own bed changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and blood. If you're just starting this story, I need you to understand something first. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm not telling you this for revenge. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there, another woman is ignoring the same signs I ignored. Another sister is trusting the same blood that betrayed me. And maybe, just maybe, my story will give her the courage to trust her instincts before it's too late. For 8 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage other women prayed for. Darnell and I met at a friend's cookout in the summer of 2015. He was tall, dark-skinned, with a smile that made you forget whatever you were worried about. He worked as a supervisor at the paper mill outside of town. Steady job, good benefits, the kind of man my mama always said I should find. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on Christmas Eve, down on one knee in front of my whole family, with a ring he'd saved for months to buy. We bought a little craftsman house on Dauphin Street, the kind with a wraparound porch and original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places. We spent 3 years renovating it together, Darnell doing the heavy lifting while I picked out paint colors and planted azaleas in the front yard. Friday nights were our date nights. We'd go to Winsel's for oysters or drive down to the eastern shore just to watch the sunset over the bay. We had inside jokes nobody else understood. We had plans for children, for growing old, for rocking chairs on that wraparound porch when our hair turned gray. I loved that man with everything I had, and I believed with my whole heart that he loved me the same way. If this story is already touching your heart, I want you to hit that like button and subscribe to Black Lady Tales. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know whose corner of the world is hearing my truth today. Whether it's morning where you are or the middle of the night, I'm grateful you're here listening to me. Now let me tell you about my sister. Tasha is 6 years younger than me. She just turned 28 last March. When I look at her, I still see the 12-year-old girl who cried herself to sleep for months after our daddy died. Lung cancer took him in 8 weeks. We barely had time to understand the diagnosis before we were picking out caskets. Mama fell apart. She tried her best, Lord knows she did, but grief does something to a person. For almost 2 years, Mama couldn't get out of bed most mornings, couldn't work, could barely eat, so I stepped up. I was 18 years old with a full nursing scholarship to the University of South Alabama. I dreamed of becoming a nurse since I was 10, watching my grandmother care for patients at the clinic where she worked. That scholarship was my ticket to everything I wanted. But Tasha needed school supplies. Tasha needed someone to braid her hair and pack her lunches. Tasha needed someone to show up to parent-teacher conferences and make sure she did her homework. Mama was drowning, and my baby sister was sinking with her. I let that scholarship go. I took a job at a medical billing company instead. Entry level, $12 an hour, but it was enough. Enough to keep the lights on while Mama healed. Enough to buy Tasha new shoes when she outgrew the old ones. Enough to make sure my little sister never felt like she'd lost everything when Daddy died. I became her mother when I was barely more than a child myself. And Tasha? She flourished. She graduated high school with honors. She went to cosmetology school and opened her own salon chair at a nice shop downtown. 3 years ago, she met Marcus Thompson, a good, hard-working man who installs electrical systems for commercial buildings. He's the kind of man who shows up early to Sunday dinner and asks if he can help Mama in the kitchen. He's the kind of man who looks at my sister like she hung the moon. They got engaged last Christmas, and the wedding was planned for next spring. I was going to be her maid of honor. We'd already picked out the dress. Life finally felt complete. My marriage was solid. My sister was happy. My mama was healthy again, singing in the church choir every Sunday. For the first time in years, I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stopped bracing for tragedy. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd earned a little peace. That belief shattered on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in Atlanta for a 3-day medical billing conference. The sessions were supposed to run through Thursday, but the keynote speaker on Tuesday got food poisoning and canceled. They rescheduled everything, and suddenly I had the option to stay or head home early. Most people would have taken the free day to explore Atlanta, maybe do some shopping or see the sights, but I missed my husband. We'd been married 8 years, and I still missed him when we were apart. That's the kind of love I thought we had. I decided to surprise him. On my way out of the city, I stopped at a wine shop and bought a bottle of that expensive Malbec Darnell, loved, the one we only drank on special occasions. I imagined his face when I walked through the door. I imagined us cooking dinner together, opening that wine, maybe slow dancing in the kitchen the way we used to when we were newlyweds. I was smiling the whole drive home, 3 hours of daydreaming about my husband's arms around me. I pulled into Mobile around 2 in the afternoon. The October sun was warm, the kind of golden light that makes everything look softer than it really is. I turned onto my street with the windows down, humming along to the radio, feeling grateful for my life in a way that almost felt reckless. Then I saw my sister's car. Tasha's silver Honda Civic was parked in my driveway, right behind Darnell's black pickup truck. For a moment, I didn't think anything of it. Tasha stopped by sometimes. She and Darnell got along well. He was like a big brother to her, always teasing her about something, always making her laugh. But then I remembered. Tasha worked at the salon on Tuesdays. She had clients booked straight through until 6 o'clock. She'd complained about it just last week, how Tuesdays were her busiest day. It was barely 2 in the afternoon. I pulled into the driveway slowly, the gravel crunching under my tires. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she'd had a cancellation. Maybe she'd come by to drop something off. Maybe Darnell was helping her with something. Her car had been making a funny noise, and he was always offering to take a look. I told myself blood wouldn't betray blood. I told myself that my sister, the girl I'd raised, the girl I'd sacrificed my dreams for, would never do the one thing that could destroy me. But when I walked through my own front door that afternoon, I learned that the people we trust most can hurt us the deepest, and nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I didn't call out when I walked in. Something stopped me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the strange stillness of the house, the way the air felt thick and wrong. Whatever it was, I stayed quiet. I eased the front door closed behind me without making a sound. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Our house is never silent in the middle of the day. Darnell always has the TV on, even if he's not watching it. ESPN, the news, something playing in the background. He says the noise keeps him company when I'm at work. But that afternoon, the living room was empty. The TV was off. The only sound was a low murmur coming from somewhere upstairs. Then I saw the shoes. Tasha's sandals were kicked off by the front door, the strappy brown ones she wore all the time, and next to them, thrown carelessly on the floor, was a pair of Darnell's work boots. He never left his boots downstairs. He was particular about that, always took them up to the bedroom closet so they wouldn't track dirt through the house. My heart started beating faster, but my mind was still making excuses. Maybe they went upstairs to fix something. Maybe there was a leak in the bathroom and Darnell needed help. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was being crazy. I walked toward the stairs. The third step has always creaked. I've been meaning to ask Darnell to fix it for years. That afternoon, I stepped over it without thinking, my body moving on autopilot while my brain tried to catch up with what my gut already knew. Halfway up, I smelled it. My perfume. The bottle of Chanel No. 5 that Darnell had given me for our anniversary last year. It hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. But I hadn't worn that perfume in weeks. I'd been saving it for special occasions, keeping it on my dresser like a little treasure. And now the scent was everywhere, like someone had just sprayed it, like someone had been wearing it. I reached the top of the stairs. The hallway stretched before me, afternoon light filtering through the window at the end. Our bedroom door was closed. We never closed that door during the day, and then I heard them. The sounds coming from behind that door told me everything I needed to know, everything I'd been refusing to believe, everything I'd been too trusting, too loyal, too foolish to see. I should have screamed. I should have burst through that door and torn them both apart with my bare hands. Every instinct in my body told me to explode, to unleash 8 years of love and 16 years of sacrifice in one devastating moment of rage. But something else happened instead. Something inside me went cold, quiet, still. It was like I floated outside my own body and watched myself from a distance. I saw my hand reach for the doorknob. I saw my fingers turn it slowly, carefully, without making a sound. I saw myself push the door open just a crack, just enough to see inside. And I saw them. I'm not going to describe what they were doing. You already know. What I will tell you is what I heard. Because the words they exchanged told me everything about how long this had been going on and how little they cared about destroying me. My sister's voice came first, lazy and content. She won't be back until tomorrow night. Relax, baby. Darnell laughed. My husband laughed. I know, I'm just saying, we need to be more careful. That time last month was too close. Last month? They'd almost been caught last month. You worry too much, Tasha said. Lori doesn't suspect anything. She trusts me completely. She trusts me completely. Those 4 words hit me harder than anything else I heard, harder than the sounds of betrayal, harder than my husband's voice telling my sister he loved the way she smelled when she wore my perfume. Because those words proved what I already knew in my gut. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was calculated. This was chosen. This was ongoing. My sister, the girl I'd raised, the girl I'd given up my scholarship for, the girl who was supposed to walk down the aisle next spring to marry a good man, had been sleeping with my husband for God knows how long. And she'd been doing it in my bed, wearing my perfume, while I worked overtime to help pay for her wedding. I stood there in the crack of that door for almost 3 minutes. I know because I was recording. When my hand reached for my phone, I don't even remember making the decision. It was like my body knew what to do even when my mind was shattered. I opened the camera, pressed record, and held the phone steady in the gap of the door. I captured their voices. I captured their words. I captured enough evidence to end both of their lies forever. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long the video runs. That's how long I stood there, watching my world burn while I documented every flame. When I finally backed away, I moved like a ghost, silent, invisible. I retreated down the hallway until I was out of earshot, and then I pressed my back against the wall and let myself have one moment of collapse. I clamped my hand over my mouth so tight I thought I might bruise my own lips. Tears poured down my face, hot and endless, soaking into my palm. My knees buckled. I slid down the wall and sat on the hallway floor, shaking so hard I thought my bones might come apart. Everything I'd built, everything I'd believed, everything I'd sacrificed, for this betrayal, for this humiliation. But I only allowed myself 60 seconds, 1 minute to fall apart, 1 minute to feel every ounce of devastation. And then something changed inside me. Something hardened. I'd spent my whole life taking care of other people. I'd spent my whole life putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. I'd given up my dreams for Tasha. I'd supported Darnell through every struggle. I'd loved them both more than I'd ever loved myself. And this is what they gave me in return. No, I wasn't going to scream at them. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken, of watching me fall apart so they could call me crazy, so they could twist this into something that was somehow my fault. I wasn't going to confront them alone. I was going to make sure everyone saw who they really were. I stood up on shaking legs and walked down the stairs, stepping over the creaky step like I was sleepwalking. I grabbed Tasha's sandals and Darnell's boots and shoved them in the coat closet, hiding the evidence of my sister's presence. Then I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove down the block to where I could watch the house without being seen. I sat there in the driver's seat, phone in my hand, 3 minutes of video that would destroy my marriage, destroy my sister's engagement, and blow apart our family forever. Some people might have deleted it. Some people might have confronted them right there. But I had spent my whole life taking care of everyone else's feelings. For once, I was going to let the truth speak for itself. I scrolled to my contacts and pressed my mother's name first. "Mama," I said, my voice steady as stone, "I need you to come by the house around 5 o'clock. I have a surprise for you." Then I called Marcus. I told him the same thing. Then Pastor Williams, same invitation, and then I sat in my car, watching my own house, and waited for the reckoning to begin. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in my car down the block, parked under the shade of an old oak tree where I could see my driveway, but couldn't be seen from the house. The October sun moved slowly across the sky, casting long shadows over the street I'd lived on for 8 years. Everything looked the same as it always did. Mrs. Johnson watering her roses, kids riding bikes after school, the mailman making his rounds. Normal life happening all around me while my entire world had just caved in. I kept looking at my phone. Not at the video, I couldn't watch that again, but at the time, watching the minutes crawl by like hours. 2:15, 2:30, 2:47, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. At 3:20, my front door opened. I sat up straighter, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tasha walked out onto the porch, and right behind her came Darnell, my husband, the man I'd promised to love until death. He was wearing the gray sweatshirt I'd bought him for his birthday and smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. They stood on the porch for a moment talking. I was too far away to hear the words, but I could see the way they looked at each other. Comfortable, easy, like this was routine, like they'd done this 100 times before. Then Tasha leaned in and kissed him goodbye. Not on the cheek, on the mouth. A quick, casual kiss. The kind you give someone you've kissed 1,000 times. The kind of kiss that says, "See you later," like you know there will be a later. Like you've been planning laters for a long time. I thought I might vomit. My stomach clenched so hard I doubled over in my seat, gasping for air. I'd known. I'd seen the video. I'd heard the words. But watching it happen in the daylight, on my own front porch, in the house I'd put years of love into, that was something different. That was real in a way the video hadn't been. Tasha got in her car and drove away without looking back. She passed right by me, close enough that I could see her face through the window. She was smiling, humming along to the radio, happy. My baby sister was happy, fresh from my husband's bed. I waited until her car turned the corner and disappeared. Then I waited another 20 minutes just to make sure she wasn't coming back, just to give my heart time to slow down, my hands time to steady. I couldn't walk into that house looking shattered. I had a performance to give. At 4 o'clock, I drove back to my driveway and parked next to Darnell's truck like nothing was wrong. I grabbed the bottle of wine I'd bought in Atlanta, the fancy Malbec I'd planned to share with him, and walked up the porch steps with a smile plastered on my face. When I opened the front door, Darnell was in the kitchen making a sandwich. "Baby," he looked up with surprise that quickly turned to delight. What are you doing home? I thought the conference went until Thursday." "Keynote speaker got food poisoning," I said, walking toward him. Every step felt like walking through wet concrete. "They rescheduled everything, so I decided to come home early and surprise you." He wrapped his arms around me and pulled me into a hug. I let him. I forced myself to melt into his embrace, to rest my head against his chest, to breathe in the scent of him. He smelled like soap and fabric softener. He'd showered. Of course he'd showered. Washed away the evidence. Washed away my sister's perfume, which was really my perfume. "I missed you," he said into my hair. "I missed you too." The lies came easier than I expected, maybe because I'd learned from a master. I pulled back and held up the wine bottle. "I brought your favorite. And I thought we could have family over for dinner tonight. Mama, Tasha, Marcus, maybe Pastor Williams, a little impromptu gathering. I've been feeling like we don't spend enough time together as a family." Something flickered across Darnell's face, just for a second. A hesitation, a shadow of something I couldn't quite read. But then it was gone, replaced by his usual easy smile. "Sounds great, baby. Whatever you want. Whatever I want." Yes, I was finally going to get exactly that. I called Mama to confirm while I started pulling dinner ingredients from the refrigerator, told Darnell I was making his grandmother's chicken and rice recipe, the one I only made on special occasions. He offered to help, but I sent him to the living room to watch TV instead. I needed to be alone. I needed time to breathe, to think, to keep myself from falling apart before the moment was right. Cooking beside my husband that evening was the most surreal experience of my life. He came in and out of the kitchen, stealing pieces of chicken, making jokes, telling me about his day, as if his day had been anything other than betraying me with my own sister. He talked about work, about the foreman being on his case, about the weather turning cooler. Normal conversation, easy and light. I smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I stirred the rice and checked the chicken and set the table for 6. And the whole time, my phone sat in my back pocket like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Mama arrived first at 10 minutes to 5. She swept through the front door with a casserole dish in her hands and a smile that lit up her whole face. At 62, my mother had settled into a peaceful kind of beauty. Gray curls framing her face, reading glasses perpetually pushed up on her head. Laugh lines earned from decades of joy and sorrow. When she hugged me, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. "What's the occasion, baby girl?" she asked, setting her dish on the counter. "You said you had a surprise." "I do, Mama, but let's wait until everyone gets here." Marcus arrived next, still in his work clothes from a job site. He'd stopped to buy flowers, white lilies, Tasha's favorite, and held them up with that shy smile of his. Sister-in-law. He always called me that, even though he and Tasha weren't married yet. "Tasha didn't tell me we were having dinner at y'all's place tonight. I brought these for her." I took the flowers from him and found a vase. "She doesn't know yet. I invited her separately. Wanted it to be a surprise." Marcus was a good man. 30 years old, raised right, worked hard. He'd grown up in Pritchard, put himself through trade school, built a solid career with his own hands. He looked at Tasha like she was the most precious thing he'd ever found. He had no idea what was coming. Pastor Williams arrived shortly after. He was a tall, distinguished man in his 60s who'd been leading our church for almost 30 years. He'd counseled me and Darnell before our wedding, had baptized both Tasha and me when we were children, had presided over my father's funeral. When he walked into my living room, he brought with him the quiet authority of a man who had seen every kind of human mess there was to see. Lorraine. He took my hand in both of his. "Your call sounded urgent. Is everything all right?" "It will be, Pastor. Please sit down. Make yourself comfortable." The last to arrive was Tasha. She walked through my front door at 5:15, still in her salon clothes, black apron tied around her waist, hair swept up in a neat bun. She was smiling when she came in, but the smile faltered when she saw the gathering in my living room. Her eyes swept across the room, Mama, Marcus, Pastor Williams, me, and then finally, inevitably, Darnell. For one split second, our eyes met, sister to sister. The girl I'd raised staring at the woman who'd just caught her in the worst kind of betrayal. I saw the flicker, the brief flash of guilt, of fear, of recognition. She knew. In that moment, looking at my face, she knew that I knew. But she recovered quickly, faster than I would have expected. "What's all this?" She laughed, a little too loud. "Y'all didn't tell me we were having a family dinner. I look a mess." "You look fine." "Baby," Mama patted the seat beside her on the couch. "Come sit down. Lori says she has a surprise for us." Tasha sat down next to our mother, her eyes darting toward Darnell again. He was in the armchair by the window, and I noticed he'd gone very still. He was staring at his hands. He wouldn't look at me. I stood in the center of my living room, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think, but my voice came out steady, calm, almost pleasant. "Before we eat," I said, "I want to show y'all something." I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'd already connected it to our TV earlier when no one was watching. The screen was ready. The video was cued. All I had to do was press play. Mama smiled expectantly. Marcus leaned forward, curious. Pastor Williams watched me with careful eyes. Tasha had gone pale. Darnell still wouldn't look up. I looked around at everyone I loved, the people who had shaped my life, who I had trusted, who I had built my world around. And I realized that after today, nothing would ever be the same again. "Y'all know I'm not one for drama," I said, my voice calm as still water. "But I think it's important that the people I love the most know the truth about the people they trust." I pressed play. And for the next 3 minutes, my living room became a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. The video started playing and my living room became an execution chamber. The first few seconds, nobody understood what they were seeing. The angle was strange, just a sliver of my bedroom through the cracked door. But then the voices started, and there was no mistaking those voices. Mama figured it out first. Her hand flew to her mouth like she'd been slapped. Her eyes went wide, then wider, then filled with a horror I'd never seen before. She looked from the screen to Tasha, back to the screen, and then this sound came out of her. A wail that started low in her chest and rose until it filled every corner of the room. It was the sound of a mother watching her family destroy itself, the sound of someone realizing that everything she believed was a lie. Marcus was slower to understand. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen, his brow furrowed in confusion. Then I watched the moment recognition hit him. His whole body went rigid. He stood up from the couch like he'd been shocked, took 2 steps toward the TV, then stopped. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. He turned to look at Tasha, and the expression on his face, confusion melting into understanding, melting into rage, was something I'll never forget. Pastor Williams bowed his head. He didn't say a word. He just closed his eyes and bowed his head like he was praying. Or maybe he just couldn't bear to watch. Darnell tried to speak. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. He looked at me with panic in his eyes, silently begging me to make it stop. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there and let the truth do what the truth does. And Tasha. My baby sister sat frozen on that couch like she'd been turned to stone. Tears were streaming down her face, but she wasn't making a sound. She wasn't looking at the screen. She couldn't. She wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring at the floor like she was praying for it to open up and swallow her whole. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long the video ran. It felt like 3 hours. When it finally ended, the silence lasted maybe 2 heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. Mama was on her feet, screaming at Tasha with a fury I'd never heard from her before. "How could you? How could you?" She was crying and screaming at the same time, her words tumbling over each other. "She raised you. When I couldn't get out of bed, when I couldn't function, your sister gave up everything for you. She was your mother when I couldn't be. And this is how you repay her?" Tasha was sobbing now, trying to speak, but Mama wouldn't let her get a word out. "Don't you dare try to explain. There is no explanation. You laid down with your sister's husband, in her bed, while she was out working to pay for your wedding." Marcus hadn't moved from where he stood. He was watching Tasha with this terrible stillness, like he was seeing her for the first time, like he was realizing the woman he'd planned to marry was a complete stranger. Finally, he walked toward her. Tasha looked up with desperate, pleading eyes. "Marcus, please, I can explain." He held up his hand and she stopped. Without a word, he reached down and took her left hand in his. For a moment, I thought he was going to hold it, comfort her somehow. Instead, he slowly, deliberately, slid the engagement ring off her finger. The ring he'd saved for 6 months to buy. The ring he'd been so proud to give her. He looked at it in his palm for a long moment. Then he looked at Tasha. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said quietly. His voice was steady, but I could hear the cracks in it. "It won't be with me." He put the ring in his pocket and walked toward the door. Tasha tried to grab his arm, but he shook her off like her touch burned him. "Marcus, please, please don't go. It was a mistake. I love you." He stopped at the door and turned around. "You don't know what love is," he said. "If you did, you never could have done this." And then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a sound of finality that echoed through the room. Now Darnell found his voice. "Lori, baby. Please." He came toward me with his hands out, reaching for me like he always did when he wanted to smooth things over. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please, just let me explain." I stepped back before he could touch me. "Don't. Baby, please, you were always working, always tired. I was lonely and she was just there." Something in me snapped. "She was just there?" My voice came out cold and sharp as a blade. My sister was just there, in my bed, wearing my perfume, talking about how I wouldn't be back until tomorrow so y'all could relax? It wasn't like that. I heard it, Darnell. I heard everything. You didn't accidentally end up in bed with my sister. That wasn't a stumble. That wasn't a moment of weakness. That took planning. That took choosing. Every single time, you chose to betray me. And you did it with the one person who should have been sacred. He tried again to reach for me. "Lori, I love you. I've always loved you. Tasha, she doesn't mean anything." "Then why?" I asked. "Why her? Of all the women in Mobile, Alabama, of all the women in the world, why did it have to be my sister?" He didn't have an answer. He just stood there with his mouth open and nothing to say. Tasha was still on the couch, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Mama had moved away from her, standing by the window with her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Pastor Williams remained seated, his head still bowed, his lips moving in what I assumed was silent prayer. "Lori." Tasha's voice was broken, barely a whisper. "Lori, please, you're my sister. You raised me. Please, can we just talk?" I turned to look at her. My baby sister. The girl I'd braided hair for and packed lunches for. The girl I'd given up my scholarship for. The girl I'd loved like my own daughter. "I raised you," I said, and my voice didn't even sound like mine. It was calm, detached, cold in a way I didn't know I could be. "I sacrificed everything for you. I gave up my dreams so you could have yours, and you took the one thing I had for myself. I'm sorry. Sorry." I let the word hang in the air. "You're sorry. Are you sorry because you did it, Tasha? Or are you sorry because you got caught?" She didn't answer. We both knew the truth. Pastor Williams finally stood up. He looked around the room at the crying women, at the defeated man, at the devastation all around him, and he shook his head slowly. "Lorraine," he said, coming to stand beside me, "you handled this with more grace than most could have, more grace than I might have in your position. He put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I'll be praying for your healing, for all of your healing." He looked at Darnell and Tasha, and for the first time I saw something like disappointment in his eyes. Not anger, just profound sadness. "I'll be praying for your repentance too," he said quietly. Then he picked up his hat and walked out the front door. Mama came to me then. She wrapped her arms around me and held me tight, the way she used to hold me when I was a little girl and something had hurt me. I let myself be held. Just for a moment, I let myself be the one who was taken care of. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered into my hair. "I'm so, so sorry." Over her shoulder, I saw Tasha stand up, her face ravaged by tears. She took a step toward us, her hand reaching out. "Mama!" "Don't." Mama's voice was ice. She didn't turn around, didn't look at Tasha. "Don't you speak to me. Don't you come near me. As far as I'm concerned, I only have one daughter now." Tasha made a sound like a wounded animal. She grabbed her purse and ran for the door, sobbing so hard she could barely see. The door slammed behind her, and then it was just me, Mama, and Darnell. Mama let go of me and turned to face him. "Get out," she said. "Miss Clara, please, this is my house too. This is my daughter's house." Mama's voice was steel. "Her name is on the deed. Her money paid for half of it. And you have lost any right you ever had to be here. Get your things and get out before I call the police and have you removed." Darnell looked at me. One last desperate plea in his eyes. I met his gaze and said nothing. I was done talking. I was done explaining. I was done giving him chances he never deserved. He went upstairs. I heard him moving around, opening drawers, packing bags. Mama stayed with me the whole time, holding my hand, not saying a word. There was nothing to say. 20 minutes later, Darnell came back down with 2 duffel bags and a box of his things. He stopped at the front door and looked at me. "I'm sorry, Lori," he said. "I really am." "Goodbye, Darnell." He walked out. The door closed behind him. And just like that, my 8-year marriage was over. Mama stayed with me for another hour, making sure I was okay, making tea I didn't drink, cleaning up the dinner no one had eaten. When she finally left, with promises to call first thing in the morning, I locked the door behind her and stood in the silence of my empty house. The same house where Darnell and I had planned our future. The same living room where Tasha and I had looked at wedding magazines and planned her engagement party. The same couch where I'd sat with my husband on countless Friday nights, thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had won, if you could call it that. I had exposed them. I had gotten my revenge. I had watched them face the consequences of their choices in front of God and family. But sitting there in my empty house, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I'd lost everything I ever loved. And the hardest part was still ahead. Learning how to rebuild a life when the foundation had been rotten all along. The next morning, I woke up alone in a bed that felt too big. For a moment, before I fully opened my eyes, I forgot. My hand reached across the mattress the way it always did, searching for the warmth of Darnell's body. When I found only cold sheets, everything came rushing back. The video, the screaming, the look on my mother's face, the sound of the door closing behind my husband. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what my life had become. By 9 o'clock, I was on the phone with a divorce attorney. Her name was Angela Richardson, a sharp black woman in her 50s who came highly recommended by a coworker whose own marriage had ended badly. When I told her my situation, she didn't gasp or express shock. She just asked calm, practical questions and told me to come to her office that afternoon with any evidence I had. I brought the video. Attorney Richardson watched it with the same detached professionalism she'd shown on the phone. When it ended, she nodded once and looked at me. "This is about as clear-cut as adultery cases get," she said. "Alabama is a fault state. Infidelity is grounds for divorce, and more importantly, it affects the division of assets. With this evidence, you're in a very strong position." Strong. I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left just the shell behind. What followed was 3 months of legal battles that taught me things about my marriage I never wanted to know. Darnell fought at first. He tried to claim the house, arguing that his income had paid the mortgage for years. Attorney Richardson shut that down quickly. The house was in my name, purchased with the inheritance my grandmother had left me as the down payment. He tried to claim I'd abandoned the marriage by working too much. She presented evidence of my consistent presence, my contributions, the vacation days I'd used to spend time with him. But the worst part wasn't what Darnell tried to take. It was what the discovery process revealed about what he'd already taken. Attorney Richardson's investigator pulled phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. The evidence painted a picture that made me sick to my stomach. The affair hadn't started a few months ago. It had been going on for 14 months. Over a year of lies, of secret meetings, of my sister and my husband laughing at me behind my back. I found receipts from restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges from nights Darnell had told me he was working late. Text messages that made me want to throw my phone across the room. One text sent from Darnell to Tasha 3 months before I caught them read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Your sister thinks I'm at a work dinner, LOL." LOL. He was laughing at me. They both were. The investigation also revealed that Darnell had been spending money on Tasha. Nice dinners, a designer purse for her birthday, a weekend getaway to Destin that he'd told me was a fishing trip with his friends, all while I was working overtime to help pay for her wedding to Marcus. The irony was so bitter, I could taste it. Meanwhile, Tasha wouldn't stop trying to contact me. The texts started the morning after the confrontation. First, apologies. "Lori, please let me explain. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me." I didn't respond. Then they became more desperate. "I know you hate me, but you're still my sister. Please don't shut me out." I blocked her number. She tried calling from other phones. I didn't answer. She showed up at Mama's house 3 times. Each time, Mama turned her away at the door. "You are not welcome here," I heard Mama told her the second time. "Not until Lori says you're forgiven, and I don't think that day is coming anytime soon." The family fractured along predictable lines. Some of my aunts and cousins thought I should forgive Tasha. "She's your blood," Aunt Dolores said at Sunday dinner one week. "Family has to stick together. What she did was wrong, but holding on to anger only hurts you." I set down my fork and looked at her. "With all due respect, Aunt Dolores, I'll decide when and if I'm ready to forgive, and I'm not there yet." Others supported me completely. My cousin Brenda, who had never liked Tasha much anyway, told me I was right to cut her off. "Some betrayals are too deep," she said. "Blood doesn't give someone the right to destroy your life." The church community was similarly divided. Some people looked at me with pity, others with something like admiration. Pastor Williams checked in on me regularly, never pressuring me to reconcile, just making sure I was surviving. About 6 weeks after that night, I got an unexpected text. It was from Marcus. "Hey, Lori, I know this is strange, but would you want to get coffee sometime? I think we might have some things to talk about." We met at a quiet cafe downtown, away from the usual spots where we might run into people we knew. Marcus looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his usual easy smile nowhere to be found. But when he saw me, he stood up and hugged me. And there was something healing in that simple gesture. 2 people who had been betrayed by the same person, finding comfort in shared understanding. "How are you holding up?" he asked when we sat down. "Some days are better than others," I admitted. "You?" He shrugged. "Same. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The times she said she was working late, the times she was too tired to hang out. I thought she was just stressed about the wedding." "I thought Darnell was just tired from work," I said. "Funny how we make excuses for the people we love." We talked for almost 2 hours, not about romance. Neither of us was anywhere close to ready for that, but about healing, about betrayal, about learning to trust ourselves again when the people we trusted most had lied to us. "You know what the worst part is?" Marcus said toward the end. "I really loved her. I would have spent my whole life with her, and the whole time she was making a fool out of me." She was making fools out of both of us, I said. But that says everything about who she is and nothing about who we are. He nodded slowly. I'm glad you had that video, he said. I'm glad you showed everyone. I would have married her, Lori. I would have married her without ever knowing. I'm glad I showed you too. We parted ways with another hug and a promise to check in on each other. Two victims of the same crime, finding unexpected solidarity. The divorce was finalized in January, 3 months after that Tuesday afternoon when I'd come home early. The judge awarded me the house, which had always been in my name anyway, plus half of our joint assets. Darnell didn't fight it in the end. I think he knew he'd already lost more than money. He moved in with a cousin across town. I heard through the grapevine that he was telling people I'd overreacted, that what he did wasn't that bad, that I'd always been cold and withholding. I didn't care. Let him tell his lies. The people who mattered knew the truth. Tasha moved to Atlanta about a month after the divorce was finalized. She'd lost her sister, her fiancé, and most of her family's respect. The salon she worked at became uncomfortable for her once word got around. Mobile is a small city in some ways, and gossip travels fast. Someone told me she'd gotten a job at a salon in Buckhead, was living with a friend from cosmetology school. I didn't wish her ill, but I also didn't miss her. Around the same time, I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Monroe was a black woman in her 60s with silver locks and kind eyes, and from the first session, she saw straight through me. "Tell me about your childhood," she said in our second meeting. I told her about Daddy dying, about Mama falling apart, about becoming Tasha's mother when I was barely 18. "And what did you give up to do that?" she asked. "My scholarship, my nursing career, my chance to—" I stopped, surprised by the tears that suddenly filled my eyes. My chance to just be young, to make mistakes, to put myself first. And have you ever put yourself first since then? I thought about it, really thought, and the answer was no. I'd spent 16 years taking care of everyone else, raising Tasha, supporting Darnell, working overtime so others could have what they needed, never asking what I needed, never wondering if the sacrifices were worth it. The patterns we establish as caretakers can be hard to break, Dr. Monroe said gently. Sometimes we give so much of ourselves that there's nothing left to guard our own hearts, and the people who take advantage of that generosity, they can sense it. They know they can take, and you'll keep giving. Those words hit me hard. I'd been so busy being needed that I'd never stopped to ask if I was being valued, if I was being protected, if I was being loved the way I deserved. I started making changes, small ones at first. I redecorated the bedroom, getting rid of the furniture Darnell and I had shared, and replacing it with new pieces that were mine alone. I painted the walls a warm terracotta color, hung art that I loved, bought sheets that felt like clouds. For the first time in 8 years, that room felt like mine. One afternoon, while cleaning out the closet, I found a photo album I hadn't looked at in years. Inside were pictures from my childhood, and there, on the third page, was a photo of me and Tasha when she was maybe 5 years old. I was holding her on my lap, and we were both laughing at something the camera hadn't captured. I sat on the floor of my closet and cried for an hour. Not for my marriage, not for revenge. For the sister I thought I had. For the relationship I thought we'd built. For the little girl in that photo who had grown up to betray me in the worst way possible. That grief was the hardest part. The anger at Darnell was clean, almost simple. But the grief over Tasha was tangled and complicated and deep. She wasn't just an unfaithful spouse. She was family. She was the child I'd raised. And losing her felt like losing a daughter. 1 year after that afternoon when I came home early and found my world shattered, I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd cooked dinner while my husband was fresh from my sister's arms, and I realized something had changed. I wasn't the same Lorraine Mitchell who had walked through that door 12 months ago. That woman would have forgiven anything, accepted any excuse, sacrificed her own peace to keep others comfortable. This Lorraine knew her worth. and she was finally ready to live like it. Today, my house looks nothing like it did a year ago. I painted every room, replaced the furniture piece by piece, planted new flowers in the front yard, hibiscus and bougainvillea, bright colors that make me smile when I come home. The wraparound porch that Darnell and I used to sit on has new chairs now, and I sit there alone on summer evenings, watching the sunset without feeling lonely, just peaceful, just free. At work, I got promoted last spring. I'm the billing department supervisor now, managing a team of 8. The same job I was too distracted to focus on when my marriage was falling apart. It turns out that when you're not constantly worried about someone else's happiness, you have a lot more energy for your own success. I started dating again about 6 months ago. Nothing serious, just coffee dates, the occasional dinner. I'm not in any rush. For the first time in my life, I'm learning what it feels like to be alone without being lonely, to enjoy my own company, to not need someone else to make me feel complete. Mama and I are closer than ever. She comes over for Sunday dinner most weeks, and we've started a tradition of going to the Eastern Shore together once a month. We sit by the water and talk about everything and nothing. She doesn't mention Tasha unless I bring her up first, which I rarely do. As for Tasha, I haven't spoken to her since that night. She still reaches out sometimes through email now that I've blocked her everywhere else. The messages have gotten less desperate over time, more resigned. "I hope you're doing well," the last one said. "I miss you. I'm sorry every day for what I did." I read that one. I didn't respond. People ask me sometimes if I'm going to forgive her. The question used to make me angry. Now it just makes me thoughtful. Here's what I've learned about forgiveness. It's not the same thing as reconciliation. I can work on releasing my anger, on letting go of the bitterness that only poisons me. That's something I'm doing in therapy, slowly on my own timeline. But forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. It doesn't mean you have to trust them again. It doesn't mean you have to pretend the betrayal didn't happen. Some relationships can't be repaired. Some shouldn't be. Maybe one day I'll be able to think about Tasha without feeling that twist in my chest. Maybe one day I'll be able to remember the good times without the bad overshadowing everything. But that day isn't today, and I've stopped putting pressure on myself to heal faster than I'm able. If you're listening to this story, if something in my experience resonates with you, I want you to hear this. Trust your instincts. That afternoon, when I pulled into my driveway and saw my sister's car, something in my gut knew. I spent months ignoring small signs, explaining away red flags, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. I wish I'd listened to myself sooner. I wish I'd asked the hard questions before the answers were playing on video in front of my whole family. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let love make you stupid. Don't let loyalty make you blind. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember this. Document everything. Don't confront them alone. Protect yourself first. Because the people who are willing to betray you that deeply are also willing to lie about it, to twist the story, to make you look like the crazy one. Get your evidence, get your witnesses, and get yourself out. The people closest to us can become the ones who hurt us most. That's a painful truth, but it's the truth. And it says everything about them and nothing about your worth. You are not diminished by someone else's betrayal. You are not less valuable because someone you loved chose not to value you. 1 year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never recover from what my husband and my sister did to me. But here I am, standing in a house that's truly mine now, living a life I built from the ashes of the one they burned down. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. If this story moved you, I'm asking you to hit that like button and subscribe to Black Lady Tales. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they can survive the worst betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know whose hearts this story has touched, whose corner of the world is listening to my truth. My name is Lorraine Mitchell. I'm 35 years old now, born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. I'm a survivor of the deepest betrayal a woman can face, from my husband and my own blood, but I'm still standing. I'm still healing. And I'm still here to tell you, you can survive anything when you finally learn to put yourself first. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me. Until next time, take care of your heart, because not everyone you love will. With love and truth, this is Black Lady Tales.